like to because I have just left a war room of lawyers who rented some space about 2 blocks from the federal courthouse. And I left, I think my nose count was 12 lawyers representing Students for Fair Admissions. They had been here a week. And as you all know, this coming Monday is the day that this trial begins. I'm going to just take you back kind of very quickly to tell you how all of this started and tell you a little bit specifically about what the Harvard lawsuit alleges and encourage all of you to, as your previous speaker said, send messages on WeChat or email or Instagram or Twitter, and it would be incredible if we had, thank you. I'm going to sound hoarse no matter what, because I've been arguing with 12 lawyers for the last 2 months. And encourage people to come to the rally tomorrow. Now, why is that important? It's important for a number of reasons, but the one thing that I think it's important to disabuse our opponents, and they are our opponents, they're not our enemies. Disabuse them of the idea that somehow or another, a little 5'9", 145-pound Jewish guy from Maine has somehow or another mobilized the Asian American community and tricked them into supporting this lawsuit. If we have a few thousand people out tomorrow, which I think we will, it's going to show America that this is broadly supported by the Asian American community in this country, as well as other racial and ethnic groups. As you all may know, this issue has been polled repeatedly over the last 15 or 20 years. 70% of Americans, 70%, including 57% of African Americans, don't believe that a student's race or ethnicity should be a part of its admissions policies. Grades, SAT scores, extracurricular activities, socioeconomic disadvantage, those all have great support among the broad base of Americans. But race and ethnicity does not, and it would be wonderful to visually show America tomorrow that, that Asians are with that majority. So, as many of you know, we filed this lawsuit in 2014. We didn't just file the Harvard lawsuit in 2014. We filed 2 lawsuits in November of 2014, challenging, of course, Harvard and the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And it had been our desire to challenge the University of Wisconsin's admissions policies. We targeted those 3 schools because those 3 schools, we believed, had uniquely discriminatory admissions policies. For Harvard, it was the Asian quota and the Asian racial balancing. For the University of North Carolina, we didn't make that argument. We made the argument that UNC doesn't even need to use racial classifications and preferences because race-neutral alternatives would have created the kind of diverse student body it was looking for. And then we never filed the University of Wisconsin, but I'm on record and our website goes into some detail. The University of Wisconsin didn't use race or doesn't use race as just a small factor in their admissions policies, but a dispositive factor. That is the thumb on the scale for underrepresented minorities at Wisconsin was not just a light thumb on the scale, kind of a tiebreaker, but rather a difference of close to 500 SAT points. So, what did we allege in Harvard? So, I can tell you that during the last 4 years of litigation, and I have some notes here, we have analyzed 6 years of Harvard's admissions data. We took the depositions of about 30 Harvard officials. We reviewed tens of thousands of documents and nearly 40,000 emails. And here is what that evidence has produced, and this is what will come out when it's our turn at the podium during the trial that we expect to last 3 weeks. First, Harvard intentionally discriminates against Asian American applicants. Now, there's an important word in here. Intentionally discriminates against Asian American applicants. Intentionally. Second, Harvard racially balances its incoming freshman class to ensure a certain racial percentage, as Mike just talked about, to achieve a certain racial proportionality for whites, Hispanics, African Americans, and Asian Americans. Third, race is not a minor factor, but rather a predominant factor, also of consideration in the University of Wisconsin. And finally, Harvard never made a good faith effort to achieve the kind of diversity it seeks to achieve using race-neutral alternatives. Well, not only did our experts and our lawyers come to the conclusion that Harvard was discriminating against Asians, but Harvard's own internal think tank came to the same conclusion. In 2013, a year before we filed our lawsuit, Harvard's internal think tank conducted a study that disclosed that Harvard's admissions policies actually did discriminate against Asian Americans. This study was presented to Harvard's most senior administrators. And what did these administrators do? They killed the report and they buried it. Now, it's one thing to be discriminating against a racial group inadvertently. That can happen. But it's something altogether different to be made aware that your admissions policies discriminate against a racial group and then do nothing about it. That is absolutely unpardonable. And then finally, I'm going to conclude with one other thing that's going to be highlighted at trial. And you will all be able to follow along with this through newspaper and media. And that is how Harvard's in-house admissions committee treats Asian American applicants when it comes to their, quote, personal score. We know that Asian American applicants score higher on SATs, on grades, and have higher extracurricular scores. They score comparable to whites on guidance counselors and admission officer recommendations. But they are scored the lowest by Harvard's in-house admissions officers on traits like likability, courage, leadership, sociability, positive personality. Now, people can have differences of opinions about race-based affirmative action. I admit that. But to tolerate this kind of racial stereotyping is beyond the pale. And it is my hope that the American public and the courts will look at this evidence and conclude that Harvard is in violation of our civil rights laws. Thanks a lot. I appreciate your time.